I lost my safety net. And so I'm on food stamps and unemployment, but really, I didn't care. I really didn't care. It was a temporary, it was humiliating and it was almost nothing, but I had my eye on the future. Hello, everybody. We're happy holidays. This is our Thanksgiving edition, and we have a Canadian on here joining me today, Jolene Janke from outside of Toronto, and Jolene is in our community, and uh, she's a front runner on most likely to become the first $1 million earner to graduate out of our community if we took a poll today. So, the whole idea of the community is, behind the podcast and everything I do is to get uh, more. The world needs more $1 million earners. The reason I wrote my book, Serial Winner, was the world needs more winners. And now it's elevated. We need more big time leaders. And great things happen to you can't get really big. You can't make $1 million a year. You can't go to the top. You can't win a championship without it. What happens is you get your fundamentals down and then you build a team. And then the benefits ripple down to everybody. So we need me more unapologetically. We need more big time winners and we need more $1 million earners, dadgummit, and above. We don't need fewer billion billionaires. We need more. And so lots of good things happen when somebody decides to climb the mountain and because you break barriers. You do special things. You have to have a lot of people involved in it. So Jolene is on track to do that. And she's got enough craziness inside of her to keep her on track for a long enough period of time to where that could happen. And so I asked Jolene to come in, and my producer said, people want to know more about, they wonder about who does the podcast and behind the scenes. So I said, okay, let's get Jolene and let her ask questions because, she comes from a unique vantage point of someone who's on the way up, had a lot of success, had a lot of experience, a lot of companies, a lot of organizations, been all over the country to big events. In the last, you were in a big event where in Vegas here in the last month or something, and you've been down to Lauderdale in the last month. You travel all over the country quite a bit, and so you got a lot of exposure, know a lot of high profile people, and so I thought if I had to be grilled by somebody, make it gentle, and we'd we we'd get Jolene involved. So Jolene, jump in and put me on the hot seat here. What do you think people would like to know?
Yeah,
And
great, Larry. Yeah.
by the way, Jolene, as far as your background and things like that, you could tell them. But I mean, she's respected all across the country and Canada in the financial services industry. She's a big organizer for the women in financial services, among other things. And so she got a lot of awards and recognition. And so uh, we would talk about that, but I'm in the spotlight this time, Jolene. So
Perfect, Larry. Perfect. All right. Well, let's get started then with our questions. So, Larry, one of my things about you is that you are just always on the grow. So I have a question, how do you continue to grow and develop as a leader?
I just have kind of like that's just the approach. It's like I have places I want to go, things I want to do, and I'm in a hurry to get there because, I I'm interested in a lot of things. You actually and your team have actually been out and you're among the very, very few have been in the inner sanctum of my West Palm Beach studio and got a studio tour. And we'll be doing more of those in the future. But the I'm able to do a lot of things now that I couldn't do on the way up. And so I learned from people, I get energy from people. And so in terms of doing the podcast, you give, you get. And so when I started out, it was like you want to do something great. First, you're interested in survival, but then you want to think, well, I'd like to be able to make above average income, but then I want to be able to feel like down the road that I haven't just been out there making money. You've made a difference in other people's lives. You're making an impact. And then, way down the road, when you are super successful, you feel kind of, more and more of, I don't know if it's an obligation to pass it on, to write these things down. Cause I know when went through my accident and I was immobilized on the couch there, one thing I realized was that, I was sitting on a whole lot of valuable information that I got in my probably 20s, pretty much in my 20s, because I'm through family connections or business connections or church connections or one connection or another, I met some like really high profile people and got to know them. And, you pick up things. And I picked up principles there that stayed with me. And I read some, the other thing is I also read some great books and that where you get ideas that stick with you. Not everything sticks with you. So I had enough there to uh, where if I hadn't have gotten those things, I had those insights and those principles uh, to organize my life around, I wouldn't have been so successful. And as a result, the insights from using that, or the track record from that, and what happens is, the experience of explaining it, because we were in financial services, opening, recruiting, training, opening up offices, distribution for financial products. And as a result, you have to train people. And so I was able to pass on, and that became my life really. But why I go at such a high level, I just hate mediocrity. I guess I don't know. I just despise being mediocre at anything because I know everything is more fun at the top. And I also know everything is more fun when you move up. Like if you're climbing a mountain, the scenery is more beautiful when you move up 100 yards. You don't have to get to the top of the mountain and see, you can see more things, every 50 yards, every 100 yards, you climb the mountain, you get a bigger view. And, uh, so if we're only here for a limited period of time, 24 hours of the day, I play to win. And so, I like winning. Everything's more fun at the highest levels. So, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And what book would you say, Larry, has been the most impactful in your life? And also, what leader would you say has really had the most influence on your life?
The Bible, and because I've been learning out of the Bible my entire life, most of the time, not understanding a lot of it and everything, but the in the New Testament, the basics of the New Testament and Jesus Christ and salvation and things like that. But what happens after that, is a big mystery. And what's helped me in my spiritual growth and really business growth is that a guy gave me a book called Principles of Spiritual Growth of the Green Letters was the first chapter of that five five book kind of combo compilation thing. But he gave me the first chapter and the first book, which is Principles of Spiritual Growth by Miles Stanford, still available for sale. And I pretty much read it almost every day for the last 50 something years. And because it's it takes a while to get it. It's one of those things where it takes a while to get it through your thick head. And so, but over time, principles get in there. But I think that's kept me on track and that's kept me moving in the right direction because basically, if you're not in line with what God's plan is for you, you're pretty much dead. You're limited to what you can do for yourself. And we're all capable of working like dogs and doing great things and then somehow doing something stupid that blows the whole thing up, and puts a toxic spin on it. You say something, or you get angry and you have a temper tantrum and you blow it all up. And so, you know, it's the more you can get your spiritual life in order, you can stay on track and you can keep that momentum and keep moving forward. And So that's the idea. I had the advantage of parents, aunts and uncles, extended family, all uh, very spiritually grounded in kind of a stable world I came out of. They weren't wealthy. They weren't making money. They weren't doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, senators, governors, you know, uh, high achievers. They weren't inventing. They weren't like Henry Ford or some scientists inventing the cure for some major disease. They weren't that kind of high achiever, but they did have strong backbone and spiritual uh, values. And really, it's amazing. You look across our family, how many monster leaders have come out of that, really high achievers, and we all came from very meager backgrounds. And so I would say those two things, but I read everything. So when I was getting started, I don't like to be ignorant. And so once I got it in my mind, this statistic, which was true and probably true today, but I'd have to go to my chat GPT, my pro chat 5 $200-300 a month version of chat to find out if this is true or not. But they did say back then, before we had Google and everything, somehow it was floating around that 85% of the people who made big incomes were salespeople. And the other 15% were they're flying planes, they're surgeons, they're, doctors, lawyers, architects, and so accountants. And so if you throw all the professional athletes on there, it doesn't turn out to a very big percentage. And so it's a great equalizer. You can learn how to do sales. Sales are learned skill. And it's the same thing today. The people who make the fortunes, like on online and build big companies and everything, they get out there and they talk to people. And there's a thing with Jeff Bezos was telling one story for about one stage he went through in the development of Amazon. And they were way on down the road, but he got a point where they needed to expand, needed more money, needed to raise $1 million or the whole thing was going to blow up. And he made 100 presentations face to face to get, I think, 20 people to be giving $50,000 a piece. 80% of them said no. And, but he was willing to do that. It wasn't that he was and in the beginning, he was willing to get down on his knees. They didn't even have a table to wrap and box up these products they were sending out before they bought a table. He tells that story too, but he was willing to do that. But so think of these things when you see him on his, 500-foot yacht that he's sailing around on now. And, with the spectacular new wife and the $1 billion wedding in Venice and everything. And that, when you see all these things, yeah, but this is a guy who started and he got that because he was willing to grind it out. And doing those presentations, that's salespeople, that's how salespeople distinguish themselves. They're willing to go out there and take the nose and sort through it. And you get it in your mind. But on most things, you offer them things, even as, like, how can they say no to this? They're going to say no. And you have to go through the numbers. And the law of averages says, and this kept me this kept me on track during my tough times. It's like the law of numbers says that everybody's not stupid. And the law of averages says that somebody's going to need whatever it is you have to offer. And if you're a decent person, you're making a semi-decent presentation and there's value in it, there's going to be somebody needs it, but not everybody. And you're going to have to go through the nose to get to the yeses. And that means you're going to have to go through the law of high numbers, because the law of high, I had to learn all these things. I got it out of a book. The law of high numbers makes the law of averages work. And so you have to get past what new people do when they go into sales. They talk to one or two people, and the people say no, and I'll never do sales. No, That's not how it is. There's no miracle way you can say the sale presentation and then everybody goes, "Wow, count, sign me up." It's a matter of getting the right person at the right time and you give them the right offer and you're pleasant and agreeable. You don't shoot yourself in the foot. You make it possible for them to like you and to like the company and then they'll like, chance they'll like the idea and if they're liking you, the company and the idea, they'll do business with you. And so anyway, I read there was a period of time, a long period of time, where I read everything. There was no way you could take me into a bookstore uh, of any size and take me to the business section, the sales management training, entrepreneur leadership, whatever it was called. That section of the bookstore, there's no way you could find a book in there I had not read. I read them all. And so, I went through I picked the brains. And because I'd gotten the idea early on, and one of those things is probably where I got the idea. I'm not sure exactly where the idea came. Then great ideas don't care who used them. And I was looking for great ideas because I came up with a solid foundation. I'm reasonably intelligent. I went to small schools, so I did well. That's a good thing. If you want to do well in life and have a good self-image, go to small schools. 'Cause, you know, you can be class president if there's like 3 or 4, 500 people, but if it's 3 or 4, 5,000, maybe it's going to be harder to be class president or president of the school. I was president of everything, National Honor Society, school, class, but there's only 14 people there or something, but a few more than that. But the thing is, I looked at it like I could figure, I can compete but I've got to find something I can get excited about. But the technical side of the skills, like the sales thing, if that's where the money is, I can learn how to do it. Because once I learn it, I've got the rest of my life. So I was sorting through and I was getting myself mentally organized for success on a skill, and a schedule I was setting myself up for success from thinking way before, I had the opportunity to really apply all that other than with myself, you know what I'm saying? And kind of like Jeff, kind of like Jeff Bezos in the garage with him and one or two other people shipping orders. It's like in the beginning you just have yourself, but that's important because you got to learn how to be your own best self coach. And I would say this to you: you earn the right to get bigger by being able to coach yourself successfully because you can think your way through things in a way that you stay on track doing the right things with the right responses and you don't lose your momentum and you don't run home to mama and you don't start blaming other people. You take your medicine and it doesn't matter if what went wrong is your fault, someone else's fault. It's like, here it is, deal with it. And what do you got to move forward? You're the only one who's got to move forward. And you can't go to say, hey, look, it's not my fault. Yeah, so what? Who cares? And so you got to deal with it. And so that kind of knowing that and working my way through that really set me up for what came down the road, I think.
Awesome. And what's one scripture, Larry, that you draw strength from? And then second question, what are some common mistakes that you see leaders make? You've obviously trained a lot of leaders, so what's one thing you see consistent that you see leaders make it as a mistake?
You asked me before about what one leader was whatever, right? I think what the answer to that, to go back to that, is that different ones at different times. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and I'm still the same way today. I'll get what I've learned is that there's always somebody who knows what you don't know. Like in Ecclesiastes, it says that, I guess that's the same way with scripture. There's always a verse for whatever situation you're in that gives you the answer. And what the idea of those verses are really like concepts and ideas. They're like keys that you can use to open doors which otherwise would be locked. But if you know that, uh, how things work, well, then you don't fight it. I'll use that verse, but if like in Ecclesiastes, it says, there's nothing new under the sun. You're not going to run into anything, any problem that people have not been dealing with throughout centuries, and they figured it out and solved it. And so it's just a matter of seeking, you'll find, see, just having things like that in your mind, but it's not one scripture is not going to get you on there unless it's I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except by me. Those kind of singular type things. No one comes into the Father unless they, unless you respect Him, and the beginning of knowledge is the fear of God. The respect for God. It's like where you come to the conclusion where you realize there is a God, and it's not you. And your job is to get yourself oriented with the God. And the God does not care, and the rest of the world doesn't care your opinion about that. You got to get your little mind and life in line with what you're supposed to be doing. And so, these scriptures, all of those things, they're all important. They all matter. They all have an application, I think. But I will say that I never read the whole Bible all the way through until I never could get myself to it until at 50, I discovered the chronological model, the Bible, where, I put it in chronological order. And there's a lot of chronological Bibles, but the ones that have the historical context, it kind of explain to you. Then you go into this section and they'll say, okay, now they're in this area, they're getting ready for a war here, or they just came out of a war here, they just getting ready to go into Egypt or out of Egypt. And so you say, oh, okay, now I know what they're talking about, rather than just kind of reading through 66 books and 3,500 pages. It helps you have some context. And so I would say different leaders at different times, and they don't all, you're not going to get one leader that, I don't think you're going to get one piano teacher that takes you all the way to Carnegie Hall. You know what I'm saying? From the time now in golf, I would say, probably in some sports, there are people like that. I know that Jack Nicklaus kept the same coach all the way, same golf coach all the way from the time he was 12 years old. But most of the time, you kind of graduate to higher level coaches or higher level people. And so, you take what you can get from whoever it is that you're working with at the time, and then you elevate your game, elevate your competition, elevate your arena, and then because you elevate your opportunities, and so you enter into a new world where you have access to people you never had access to before. And so at different times, it's been different people, but they've always been really top people. Because I learned that, if you can get whatever it is you want to do, if you can get the best equipment possible, take the equipment out of the thing. The equipment's not going to be the make or break, but it can give you, that's an advantage you can give yourself. So the thing is that, I like to, as good equipment as I get it. I've got two of the state of the art sets of skis sitting in my locker out in Aspen, waiting for me to show up, dress fed, with my legs strong, ready to ski. And this probably the end of January when I get out there. But I don't want to go out there in crappy old skis. I want a state of the art, because I take that out of play. You take the equipment out of play. And then it's a matter of advice in terms of operating the equipment. You want to get the best coaching, the best input. And so you're still going to go, hit your golf ball. You still got to ski your skis. You still got to run your company, but, or go in and paint. You've seen us in the studio, and uh, but you still got to do it. You got to make it happen. But the input and the techniques and all of that, time saving things, I always wanted to get the highest level person advising me that I possibly could, to go with the best equipment, because what that gave me, and this is why we have the community. I mean, this leads to everything. This is how I've designed my management development system. This is how I put things in place when I went to North Carolina, had to have a I not only started on food stamps and unemployment when I changed industries, I went from highly successful in construction. We built 100 houses in 4 years, and the year after I left, my partner was elected president of the Atlanta Home Builders Association, and I built the houses. He stayed inside and did the books. And I left in January. I left in December, end of December. I was the field guy. I built the houses. But based off our reputation, he gets elected. Uh, and what happened was, was a slowdown. There were nobody was buying houses. It wasn't we didn't have people stacked up wanting to buy the houses. They couldn't get financing. And so, I said, I'm out. This is, we just didn't have any money coming in. And I didn't want to have to go through that. I said, I can't be in an industry where I put in years of 100-hour work weeks and then wind up in a situation like this. Put my name in the bank to change industries, just like I changed majors at Georgia Tech. I got out of architecture once I found out in the second year that it was going to be another 3 years of sleepless nights to graduate. And most people didn't graduate, but if you did graduate, your reward was the first step was 3 more years of being a draftsman on minimum wage before you could begin to flunk your architectural exams, which everybody flunks the first few times. It's like, I don't want to do that. I got a family to support. I want to make money. I want to have fun. I don't want to be sleepless nights the rest of my life. So I switched, so that's what I did. I did no, I stated it long enough to get all of the facts, and I said, I'm out of here. And so I took the next best option. And that's what I did when I took construction as far as it could go, and we did well. I excelled at it. But the thing is that no, not worth it. And see, you don't have to sit there and take it if you're getting kicked in the teeth, or you look down the road and you say, wait a minute, this road's not going where thought it would go. So I don't have any enthusiasm for staying on this road anymore. So I switched. It was the same thing. I switched industries. But when I started, I I lost my safety net, and so I'm on food stamps and unemployment. But really, I didn't care. I really didn't care. It was a temporary. It was humiliating. And it was almost nothing. But I had my eye on the future, and you're looking for something I could get excited about. And I did find, an arena of financial services I could get excited about, helping people doing financial planning, you know, showing them the truth about how money works, and not be a victim of all these companies that are basically, predators on middle class people. And I'm talking about all the big names: Prudential, Metropolitan, Northwest Mutual. They're all predators, basically, since started after the Civil War, and on concepts that worked for them, but nailed the middle income people bought from them to the wall. And, it's basically a shell game. And so we love going in there telling people the truth and enraging, uh, the 635,000 people in the Life Underwriter Association. They all hated us coast to coast, taking the good news of buy term invest a difference to the public. you know, we were the rebels, and so they couldn't do anything about us because we dealt in the truth, and so we put everything in writing. And they did take their shots. They did uh, uh, everything they could, lie, cheat, and steal, but you can't. The truth eventually will win out, and that's what we did. But when I went to North Carolina, that was an opportunity to go from sales into management and build an organization, because the company, I was one of the first ones. A friend of mine, Bill Arender, moved to Dallas. He was more advanced in the company at that time than me anyway, but he went to Dallas. I didn't want to go to Dallas because you know, I I knew I wouldn't feel at home in Texas for some reason. I'd always been in the Southeast. So I wanted to be someplace where I'd feel at home and wouldn't feel like I needed to be moving, get this over with so I can move back to where I want to be. I want to be someplace where I'd want to be there. But we learned things. I learned how to compound, learned how to put people together. And the second year we recruited 1,800, and the third year we recruited 7,500, and then after that we recruited 15,000. And so what happened was like 25,000 in 3 years, but it was that compounding, all that stuff. I had the platform for success. I'd had experience with working with subcontractors building houses, so it's another skill set I developed. With being able to move people up, train them, give them responsibility, turn them loose, but then hold them accountable. Come back in and develop systems where you can turn them loose, but you know what they're doing and you never let them out of your sight for long. And so all of that stuff, that preparation came out during those years. And I've been compounding that and teaching that stuff ever since. And that's how I've evolved into the podcast. And, I still, my method is still the same. I pick the brains of people who are at the top and I apply what principles they use. And then we created a community where we can do that together. We can share and challenge each other together, just as if we were in the same company. What happened? We had done that successfully inside a financial services company, but it was one company. And, you look out there, there's a big world. And at some point you say, I'd like to really make an impact outside of this one company. And because these principles are applicable across the board. So that's why we created the big hitter community. And since we'd had such a successful track record teaching a system that allowed people to get organized for success and then go out and compound and build $1 million income businesses, we made that the focus of the big hitter community. And you are our, that's where you are. You're in the, you're in the oyster shell there, becoming a diamond. Okay, you don't become a diamond without an oyster. Isn't that what it is? No, pearl in the oyster shell. So, but even a diamond's under all this rock inside the mountain, all that pressure going in it. And so you got to be in an environment, folks. If you want to become a pearl, a diamond, or whatever, you got to have some world where you can develop it. So that's why we did that's why we have the community, and we want to build an army, a monster army of people that are focused on winning because we learn from each other. None of us knows everything. So that gives you some of, lots of leaders at different times. And when you move up, there's a whole lot of different things you need to know. And then you find out that, hey, there's a million people already at this level. I didn't know that. I asked my guitar teacher once when I learned how to play a real tricky thing with my finger picking thing on the guitar. And I was real proud of myself. I said, how many people in the world even know how to play that? He said, oh, millions. Talking about putting a pin in my balloon. I thought I was special because I could, figured out how to do that. But and so uh uh there's a lot of people out there that you can learn from if you're open-minded.
Well, another question too, Larry. I know you have a lot of different interests, and how do you measure a productive day for yourself? Like, what is it that you do in a day, and then you go, that was a winning day?
I like to move. I like to get things done. And so when the Bible has this thing, sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. So I just want to move. I get whatever comes up in my mind. And sometimes, your subconscious will wake you up at 2 a.m. and like all of a sudden, deal with this, and I have found, even if you don't want to deal with it, turn the light on, turn on your phone or get a notepad out and start writing whatever comes in you. Some of the greatest songs in history have been come in the middle of the night to songwriters, just fully formed. It's just like, boom, there it was. I got up, wrote it down, went back to sleep, forgot that I'd written it down. I woke up and I had one of the all-time greatest hits sitting there on my nightstand. So your subconscious never stops working and organizing. And so uh, usually it's one of the great things about being your own boss and controlling your world is the higher you go, the more freedom you have to be flexible and put your energy into what needs to be done at that day. But I look at things is like, we're on the road to put things together, like building the community, like doing the podcast, getting the best, the guest lineup. It's just like it's all business. You have things, you got to get your supplies, in the podcasting business, your supplies, your inventory is your lineup of guests that are on the schedule to be interviewed, podcasts that you are scheduled to be interviewed on, interviews that you've already done, podcast interviews where you've got them in the can and you've got them on the schedule to be rolled out on your 1 or 2 or 3 a week schedule, where you've got them, your production line lined up. It's all, a process. And, all businesses are all the same thing, and so, there'll be some area where, oops, we got behind on that. There's always something needs to be done. And so when I like that. I like I despise being behind. I guess one thing, if I like being ahead, I like getting things done, but I despise uh, being behind. And we used to have a thing, we're in financial services. Homework is a pain in the butt if you're late.
Yes.
If it's anything that's due tomorrow and you haven't put any energy into it, it's annoying. Oh, it's such a hassle. When it's fun? When you did it in advance.
True.
Everything's easier when you do it ahead of schedule and you
Yeah.
take the pressure off yourself. People go through life and they're losers because they never create a margin for error in their life. They think everything's going to go perfect. They'll line up a perfect schedule. They'll be perfect. Life will be perfect. The car will be perfect. The kids will be perfect. The spouse will be perfect. The job will be perfect. The highway will be perfect. Traffic will be perfect. Everything will be perfect. The flight will be perfect. And I have a schedule and no margin for error.
True.
And then guess what happens? Something goes wrong. And then you're a nightmare. You're running around and I'm going to be late for this and the other. Well, why in the world didn't you give yourself a little margin for error? Did you ever learn from this? Is this the first time something's gone wrong in your life? And so I like giving myself margins for error because I know things are going to go wrong. And you can't think of everything that's going to go wrong, but the things that you can think of that'll go wrong, give yourself a little float, get in front of the game. So I'm always looking like if I can't get, here's my attitude. Here's what I went to North Carolina. I refined this when I went to North Carolina because when I was in construction, on an average day, I would have 11 crews. I would always have about 5 different subdivisions I was building houses in, and I would have 11 crews out working on something somewhere in a given day. And so, I pretty much, I didn't have to think. I had to work with them. I had to get them supplies. I had to go and make sure they showed up. I got to keep them on track, make sure they're doing the right things. And, but, you know, when I went into this business, I was only managing myself. And so it's a matter of how can I set myself up? And this is where the principle of overdue came from that I have as a second chapter in my book on how you get things done. Because after you decide you want to do something, you launch out. Most people set out for failure because right from the beginning, they underestimate how much effort and time and money it's going to take to pull it off. And so my thing is, since we know governments do that, countries do that, if they're going to build a bridge, they'll underestimate how long and it's going to take and what it's going to cost. If the military is going to build a new jet, no, now we have the F-45 is that's going to go over budget. Let me tell there's never been a weapon system the military's ever had, a tank, a whatever, that has not gone over budget and been, taken longer to develop. So whatever it is, you've got to allow for these things or get punished because you didn't. And so I don't like get punished. I don't like to be back, myself because a deadline backs me into a corner. I don't like anybody. So I wanted to have control over my life where I could live where I wanted to live and I wanted to be able to make above average income. I didn't really care what I did, but I wanted control of my life and I wanted to be paid for putting in the effort. And that's kind of motivated me all the way through. That's kind of part of behind me, like to stay ahead of the game. So I like to knock things out. And I developed this when I was in charge of myself. I went up to North Carolina. There was not even, when I was in Atlanta, I was in Bob Turley's office and he kind of ran the show. We got this meeting here, we got this meeting there, we got this, that, and the other, we got this contest going or whatever. But when I was in North Carolina, I ran the show. There was no show that I didn't run. So what I was in charge of what we got done today. So here was my philosophy, and I do it still today. I go off. I don't worry, Jolene. I don't know how you operate, but I don't worry about what I don't want to do. I focus on what do I want to do today? Okay? If I don't want to do something, that means we ain't doing it today, probably. You know. Now, if it's marginal, sometimes you just got to get yourself to bite the bullet and get it over with, get it behind you. Again, margin for errors. If something's creeping up on you, there's like a deadline coming, you say, okay, I'm not really gung ho about doing that, but I am going to do it. And then you feel great because you got that margin for error back in there. But usually I operate off what do I, what can I get it's basically what can I get myself to do today? Because in every business, back even when I went up there, it was like I had a certain amount of paperwork work to do. I had a certain amount of, I had to learn about this. I had a certain, back then I had to order certain supplies. There was nobody to order anything but me. I had to, and boxes came. I had to unbutton boxes and put them up on the counter. And then I had to call Atlanta to solve a couple of problems, with the home office, or to call and check on that. And then there was always tapes to listen to. Back then when we had cassette tapes was the trade. There was always a tape to listen to. There was always a memo to read. And then that's just mumbo jumbo administrative stuff. And then the things that you make money off of, so many people to set, making appointments and seeing people and things like that. So I had my schedule in every day. I put things in. I knew that I like to see somebody first of the day. So I had to trick, but I don't like to get up early. So I'd set up a breakfast appointment every morning because I knew when I wake up, I said, oh, they're going to be over there waiting on me. Okay, I got to get over there. So it's like how I manage myself. But then after it was over, I had my first appointment of the day. And so, I'd broken the ice. And so you have little things you put in there to get yourself, and then you feel better about things. And then it's a matter as you move through the day, what can you get yourself? I'm always getting some done. It's like, if I'm not doing this, I'm doing that. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And then if I'm goofing off, I'm goofing. I don't mind goofing off because you got to have some recovery time. I unapologetically will just sit there and zone out. It's like, there's a value to that too. Going to the gym or having some recreational things you do. And so over the years, I've blended in a whole lot of that kind of stuff. I've competitively rode show jumping horses for 16 years. Even got up to where I could compete with Olympic riders, like even though here in Wellington, which is over my shoulder here in South Florida, uh, and which is Horse Universe. And so, uh, I did a lot of things. I've been all over the world doing wing shooting and bow hunting and skiing, been all over the world skiing. And I have buddies in those things. So you make friends, you make contacts, you make it part of your business. And so, always doing something either to get it done, to create a margin for error, or to look for inspiration, to kind of create your energy. And so that's kind of the madness that I go through.
I love it. Well, maybe a couple final questions, Larry. So, if you were to describe yourself in 3 words, what 3 words would describe Larry Weidel?
Born again Christian. That's the first 3 words that came in.
Okay, I love it. I love it. I would say one final question too would be, what is one thing or a couple thing? I mean, you do so many things, but what's something that you are really, really proud of? Like, I know you're proud of lots of things, but something that really stands out as a pivotal moment when you were there. You just looked in the mirror and you're like, I'm proud of me. What was that moment?
Well, we live in a fluid universe. We have so many things happening over time. But I would say, for perspective, looking back, I would have to be, I'm proud of my career and I'm proud of, all of those achievements and everything. It's just like More great, the way I look a lot of that stuff is I'm more grateful for it than proud. It's like, humbled by it, that type thing. And things that stand out that you're really, I was really grateful for are my 2 boys and, how they, their character and, being able to trust them and know that they're making the right decisions and, not that you agree on everything, but basically they're solid as a rock, solid citizens. And because, the thing is that the kids go haywire on you, they can create so much hell, it's unbelievable. It's like when they're young, you take one uncontrolled 2-year-old could just make hell out of your life, It's like having a bad dog, really. Uh I think Caesar the dog whisperer is worth his weight in gold if you have misbehaving dogs, But the thing is that the fact that, and again, when kids are young, they're going to be where they're going to be. You don't know how they're going to turn out. You just have to live with it, live through it. So, they'll come up with stuff you just can't believe. And, but then to have to come out the other side of the tunnel and be such solid citizens where they only add to your life in enjoyment rather than take away. That, I mean, to me, that's better than money, isn't it? It's better than the house you live in, the car you drive, the whatever. Just peace. The thing is like it's one thing to have income, but it's another thing to have contentment and have and be able to live your life in peace. I get so much done because I don't have a lot of static in my life. You know what I'm saying? And I designed it that way. That's why I stay ahead of the game. If there's a problem person, out. If it's a problem, it's the same with a career. Problem career, out. I'll find a good one. There's too many good ones. Problem place to live. We lived in North Carolina. We outgrew North Carolina. I moved. The boys were raised. Great place to raise a family. And it was time for me to go on another phase of my life. I came down to North Palm Beach because that's where Art Williams, my billionaire buddy, was. And I said, well, there's nothing that says you have to be a billionaire to get through the city limits, so I can live down there too, you know. And so joined the same clubs as Art Williams. You know, I'm in the same club with Donald Trump. So now I go out, I got a place in Aspen. I don't just ski in Aspen. I spend the summer out there and the weather is great. So the thing is where you can design your life to get rid of the static and to when you do that, you create open doors for you to be to be productive because the friction goes down. You take the static out and when it comes, it's like static is always going to rear its ugly head. But when it does, you say, okay, solve that problem. Number one. Number two, make changes, put in systems, make adjustments. So, very unlikely that that problem ever comes up again in the rest of my life. Okay. Like, I didn't know that was a possibility, but I'm going to take that out of the range of possibilities. And so over time, you get less and less stress in your life, which allows you to be more and more productive. And it's amazing to live your life where you have positive things happening at a uh, rapid rate because it's like any kind of win, it energizes you. And so that's how that's why a lot of successful people seem to have so much energy is they're just going from win to win to win. And uh there's no shortage of inspiration and adrenaline rush from the things that happen because you're like, I can't believe that happened. I can't believe I met that person. I can't believe this opportunity showed up. I can't believe we broke that record. And so, but you can't do that if you're fighting off a bunch of fires or static in your life that you've just let accumulate, refuse to deal with, face the problem, deal with it, and it just kind of grows because they'll never go away. These problems in your life will never go away unless you deal with them. So, what do you think?
Yeah,
Have
so,
you?
okay, final question, I know it is
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, so what's your
Yeah.
favorite food for Thanksgiving?
I like turkey. I like the standard turkey with all the dressings and all of that stuff. I'm going to eat an
Nice.
early Thanksgiving, and then go up to my family reunion on Thursday. Go to my family reunion we have up in Georgia, and so I think
Nice.
I'm driving this year. I'm going to avoid all the the airlines, but yeah, I like the traditional stuff.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you, Larry.
My pleasure. So let me ask. I'll go back to interviewer myself. So what stood out to you the most? Would you say? What do you think people got from this?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, one thing I'm really present to is I love that you just said just from win to win. I really got that. And sometimes even, setbacks can be wins if you learn from them. And I really got in your life. There's a lot of that. I love when you always talk about natural curiosity because when we're drawn to things, it's like our inner intuition and we need to follow that. Our subconscious, like you said, wakes us up, tells us what to do. Like if we just are intuitive with it, and I really like that. I mean, obviously, being a born again Christian, I'm a new Christian as of 2016. Got baptized, and I do believe that has been just a transformational shift in my life. Just knowing whose I am, because I have peace. It really gave me peace. So I really got that from you. You just lead with purpose, and you're really grateful. I always find that people who walk with God, you're just grateful for all of it because there is something good in everything. So I think I took that away for sure.
Well, I think you take also there is something to say for the natural curiosity of putting pictures up there in the wall. Like I heard a Sharon Stone interview yesterday where she said when she was coming up, she was an actress and all she could get was the toothpaste commercials, and she every time she got a commercial lined up, she went to her acting coach, to make sure and finally the acting coach said, Sharon, what is it you really want to be? You know, and she said, well, I want to be an actress. And ultimately, one day, I want to act and I want to be acting directly, me with Robert De Niro. She was doing commercials. And then, and that came true. She was talking about how it came true in the movie Casino, I think. And so I think there's something about having a wild dream up there because that comes from somewhere. That is like there's a reason that's put in your head, but I think you embrace it. And I think also when you're doing that, uh I count it as a win if I have something I don't understand. And with creating this community, there's a lot of thing. Well, how do you do that? How do you say that? Why do you do that? Unending questions. But I can't. Every time I get an answer, I count it as a win. It's like, all right, I can move forward. I'll never ask that question again. I got it. Okay. And so I like the things that allow you to move forward in your life and you can get as much of a bang out of those little things that like stumped you, something that's just, it's like I told you, what's one of the things that stumped me was doing these podcasts. It's 20 years of trying to do a podcast and we'd study, we'd listen, we YouTube, we'd read books, I even sent my uh, top assistant admin through a $2,000 way back, 25 years ago, course on how to do podcasting because I, have her set it up, get the equipment. Never could get a podcast going. Just, but finally, with COVID and Zoom, got on there. People learned how to do Zoom things and everything, and it made it easier. I mean, at one time I bought 200 microphones and we would send them out to people because people didn't know how to, and then we'd have to have extra, how you load the recording program on your computer and you plug it in and then you do this and it was just such a nightmare. And I just said, forget it. But when Zoom came, all of a sudden it started to get easier. And so now years later, I've got closing in on 1,000 episodes of the podcast. And so, but when you figure things out, I count those as wins. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah.
everything when you go forward in life and when you're making progress, you open up a whole nother world of things you don't know how to do. And so in the process, there's a lot of things you can figure out. And that education, to me, those are wins. I'd love to meet that person. I'd love to go there. I'd love to do that. All of these things, I've never been over there. I'd love to go there. I'd love to find out about that. I'd love to find somebody who knows how to do this, that, and the other. And then someone introduces you. So everybody's welcome to join us. You can get us at join us at joinbighitters.com. It's a community, and that'll take you to our landing page. And if you're high motivated, only do that if you're high motivated. If you're low motivated, you're not, you're just thinking about it. You come get on my newsletter. We have drips of gold going out every week in the newsletter, free. Listen to my podcast, like this is going to be in the podcast, free. And so when you're, low to medium, you probably don't need to be paying for anything. But when you say, okay, it's time for me to move, get in the community, quit screwing around, and, put your money where your mouth is, basically, and get going, because we're only here for a short period of time. And we're not, you're, listen, folks, you ain't all going to live as long as I've lived. Okay. I've outlived all my other cousins except one. And I'm going to see her in the reunion. And I always tell her, I said, you're next. You're next. But, we know, we've lost a lot of cousins along the way. And so we don't know how long we're going to be here. But while you're here, make something happen, folks. Make an impact. All right. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Larry.
This has been great.